Thank you. Yali Chen from Washington Observer. I have a few questions. One question is, I think the great thing about this survey is it has been done for over the years. So I'm very interested in knowing the result, how the U.S. and Chinese opinion leaders' view about each other have changed over the years. That's the first question. The second question is, I find it's interesting. The survey showed that the Chinese Communist Party members hold a more favorable opinion of the U.S. than those non-party members. I think that's very interesting. Victor Yuan and Dr. Li Cheng can explain that. The third question I have is also the results show the U.S. general public with a higher income are more likely to hold a negative opinion of China. I think, Frank, you just explained you believe that the personal context actually will help shape the public's opinions. If that conclusion is true, I think that conclusion is contradicting with this one, because I believe Americans with higher income tend to go to China more than the low income. So could you explain that? Thank you.
Well, I think my friend Victor Yuan probably will answer about the changes of public opinions and also particular opinion leaders of China. But let me answer the questions you raised about, you're right, that the Communist Party members usually have more favorable views. I think it's probably like 20 to 30% higher than the general public in terms of favorable views of the United States. This should not be a surprise, as we know that the elites usually take a more favorable views of China. You see that the 91% versus 60%. Communist Party members, usually elites, work in opinion leaders, business leaders, and etc. And so that certainly tells first that the party no longer take a very anti-American position, right? They want to trade, they want to have good relationship, and they certainly benefit greatly if we are leaders, or whether opinion leaders or business leaders. Now, also interesting to see that the low-income Americans and or ethnic minorities usually take a favorable views. This probably contrasts to 10 years ago, probably it's the opposite situation. This I will interpret that despite a lot of China bashing in the media and etc., and also the worry about the China's products, majority of low-income Americans still believe that trade with China benefits their life tremendously, and particularly the products in some major stores so inexpensive, and so that's my interpretation. Maybe there's some other interpretations.
About the change of Chinese opinion leaders, first actually if you compare to general public, this is the first time we do have the mirror study between the two sides about the opinion leaders look at the relationship between two countries. But we do have some study about, as a relevant study, we do see kind of a way to project the change. The first thing is about the general public would be more flexible. They will change sometimes, especially with the stimulation of a special event that happened between the two countries. But for the opinion leader would be more stable, and because they analyze the relationship between the two sides more rationally, and they look at some the key dimensions there. For example, interdependence of trade, from both sides, and also after September 11, the two countries will have that kind of a cooperative relations about anti-terrorism. So they do see that kind of strategic relationship behind those events, happened many times. But also, the second thing I want to mention, the Chinese elites were heavily impacted by the American culture and American information. And if you look at, in the past 10 years, the exchange program between China and other country, and the Chinese political elites, the media elites, all those elites, and even academic elites, majority of them that come to United States to get a training, visiting scholarship, all those things. And if you look at the books published by the Chinese, the writers and the professors, each 100 book and 80 books about American or American relevant. So in that sense, their idea mentally heavily shaped by American value or many kinds of professional standard. So in that sense, when they look at American, they will pretty much take it as a kind of a standard. So look at this. So it's with that kind of mentality. So that is why with a much stronger, that kind of mind to look up on what happened in the United States.
Well, let me answer that last question. This survey makes me realize that my mother was right. I should have paid attention in Chinese school on the weekends because there are tremendous economic opportunities now that 25 years ago you couldn't have imagined. And we all know, I think, people who are not of Asian background, who have studied Chinese, who work in China, who are entrepreneurs, and who are wildly successful. I think in part that's what's going on. This survey shows that there is a fear about the place in the world that these nations will have within our lifetimes. And for people who make a greater level of income, for the economic elites, they have much more to lose. Much more is at risk. Their aspirations and ambitions, what they can imagine for themselves and their children, are much greater. So for the American economic elite, what this shows is that they will have to reckon with China in a way that they never would have imagined a generation ago. And that perhaps is why there's less willingness among individuals with higher incomes to accept these changes.